Have you noticed? Something huge is happening in 2025, and almost no one's talking about it. Why are some of America's closest allies quietly stepping away all at the same time? It's not because the US is weaker. It's because the US has become unpredictable. Policies shift overnight. Commitments change. And the tone? Increasingly confrontational. So where are they going? Not far. Canada. It's not bigger. It's not cheaper. But it's more reliable, more stable, more transparent. Each country has its own reason, but together they're all quietly changing direction. You might guess a few of them, but some names on this list will truly surprise you. Why would they walk away from the US after decades of close partnership? Don't blink, because just a few seconds could mean missing the most important part of the story. Have you noticed? Something huge is happening in 2025, and almost no one's talking about it. Why are some of America's closest allies quietly stepping away all at the same time? It's not because the US is weaker. It's because the US has become unpredictable. Policies shift overnight. Commitments change. And the tone? Increasingly confrontational. So where are they going? Not far. Canada. It's not bigger. It's not cheaper. But it's more reliable, more stable, more transparent. Each country has its own reason, but together they're all quietly changing direction. You might guess a few of them, but some names on this list will truly surprise you. Why would they walk away from the US after decades of close partnership? Don't blink, because just a few seconds could mean missing the most important part of the story. Number 2, Mexico. This past June, Canadians were surprised to see their grocery aisles overflowing with ripe, red strawberries from Mexico, just $3 a box. Bell peppers, avocados, mushrooms, fresh, in season, and suddenly everywhere. But here's what really turned heads. None of it came through the US border like it used to. Since early 2025, a wave of new policies out of Washington has put Mexican agricultural exporters in a chokehold. Higher tariffs, stricter border controls, new rules targeting foreign truck drivers. The result? Shipments getting stuck for days in Texas. While American shelves are running low, Canada opened up a new route faster, smoother, and free of political red tape. Mexican-produced flooding into Halifax, Montreal, and Vancouver has nearly doubled compared to this time last year. Now in Quebec, people no longer have to wait for the right season to find Jalisco avocados or Sinaloa peppers, and prices are noticeably better than across the border. So why is Mexico turning to Canada? The answer's simple. Canada doesn't play hardball. It doesn't back out every time a new party takes office. They keep their word, said one Mexican exporter. And just like that, the supply chain started to shift. The impact for Canadians is obvious. More stable prices, fully stocked shelves. And for many families, it's not just convenient, it's actual relief. A grandmother in Trois-Rivières told CBC, "When I buy strawberries for my grandkids now, I don't have to second guess it. It feels like life before the pandemic." And in the US, states like Texas, Arizona, and California are feeling the crunch. Slipping sales, rising prices, and more shoppers settling for frozen goods. Some American farmers are even speaking out. Our own government pushed Mexico toward Canada and didn't even realize it. Meanwhile, Canada isn't picking a fight. They're just staying steady, cooperative, punctual, and not politicizing the dinner table. And because of that, they're quietly reshaping the continent's supply chain, starting with the simple things. Number 3, South Korea. Can you believe the newest iPhone might hit shelves in Toronto before it shows up in New York? This isn't because Apple changed its rollout strategy. It's because some of the iPhone's most critical components, from memory chips and OLED screens to camera modules, are now being developed and manufactured in Canada. All thanks to a quiet but powerful partnership between South Korea and the Canadian government. In early 2025, SK Group, one of Apple's key suppliers for iPhones and AI devices, signed a deal to build a semiconductor hub in Mississauga, Ontario. Originally, this project was slated for Texas. But after a string of tax code changes, vague financial commitments, and mounting political pressure from Washington, South Korea pulled out. And in Canada, they found what they were missing: stability, transparency, and real cooperation. No flashy press conferences, just results. LG Innotek began testing next-gen camera modules in Toronto. Samsung started shifting part of its OLED research out of California. Things once proudly labeled "Made in the USA" are quietly heading north. And American consumers? They're starting to feel the difference, but not in a good way. The latest iPhones in the US could cost 8 to 12% more due to unstable component pricing and supply chain hiccups. Meanwhile, in places like Vancouver or Ottawa, the same devices are already on shelves priced lower with no delays. But this story isn't just about a phone. When the world's biggest tech companies start trusting Canada with core manufacturing, it's only a matter of time before EVs, aircraft, and medical robotics follow suit. And if you still think Canada's only strength is in software, take a second look. Tech hubs like Kitchener, Waterloo, and Peel are now making serious moves into hardware. Engineers who once left the industry are being called back in. No longer just Silicon Valley's cousin, Canada is writing its own chapter. Number 4. France. France and the US used to be inseparable allies, fighting side by side in world wars, co-signing NATO, standing united at the G7. But in 2025, something unexpected happened. France made a clean energy pivot toward Canada. It all started when Washington suddenly raised tariffs on European steel and industrial equipment. Within just 3 months, over $1.2 billion worth of wind turbines, fuel cells, and next-gen nuclear tech from France was pledged not to the US, but to Canada, specifically Quebec, Ontario, and Nova Scotia. No drama, no headlines. But this move quietly transformed Canada's clean energy landscape, especially in regions that had long been overlooked because they were too far from the industrial core. France's shift didn't stop at energy. It's now part of everyday life. Before, if you lived in Canada and wanted a bottle of French wine, a bottle of perfume, or handcrafted goods from Provence, you'd usually have to order through the US, expensive, slow, and layered with red tape. But since France opened trade offices in Vancouver and Montreal, high-end European products have started flowing directly in no middleman. Meanwhile, in the US, made in France is quietly disappearing. Luxury retailers in New York and LA are struggling, hit by higher tariffs, sluggish logistics, and unresolved trade tensions. On the flip side, Canadian consumers are enjoying what used to feel like a luxury: sipping French wine in Quebec, or buying an artisan-knit sweater from Provence in downtown Toronto without going through American distribution. But this isn't just about trade. It's a cultural shift. Canada's no longer just the middle stop between Europe and the US. It's becoming a destination in its own right for culture, technology, and premium goods on its own terms. Number 5. The Netherlands. You might not know this, but for over 30 years, the soft, slightly sweet Dutch breakfast rolls you'd find in Amsterdam cafes were made from American wheat, mostly grown in Kansas, Nebraska, or Iowa. But that changed in mid-2025. The Netherlands quietly signed a wave of new deals with Canadian wheat suppliers, especially in Saskatchewan and Manitoba. In just 3 months, Canadian wheat exports to the Netherlands jumped by 48% compared to the same period last year. Meanwhile, the US saw its market share drop by over 30%. The reason? Pretty straightforward. Earlier this year, the US government raised export taxes on agricultural products and slashed support for wheat farmers. Canada didn't need massive subsidies to step in. They just kept doing what they've always done. Stay transparent, clean, and consistent. No last-minute rule changes. In the US, the fallout hit fast. Farmers in Kansas watched their grain silos overflow with no buyers. Flour mills shut down early. And rural towns that once thrived on agriculture are now relying on federal aid. Meanwhile, across the border in Canada, quiet places like Moose Jaw, York, and Brandon are lighting up. A new flour processing plant just broke ground near Swift Current, something the region hasn't seen in over a decade. No one expected a single well-timed handshake to shift the map like this. But the Netherlands didn't just choose Canada for quality, they chose peace of mind. Tomorrow's bread won't be delayed because a shipment stuck in customs in Houston. Canadians aren't making noise about it. But in towns where farming is still the soul of the community, you can feel it happening. A revival. Number 6. Brazil. Brazil, the place where Texas flavor once defined premium dining. In Sao Paulo's upscale restaurants, only American beef was served USDA graded, tender, marbled just right. Every cut of steak was a statement. This is the American way of living. But in early 2025, that changed. Washington slapped a 25% export tax on U.S. beef. Prices soared. Paperwork piled up. Orders got stuck. And while the U.S. was scrambling, Canada stepped in on time and with a plan. In less than 5 months, Brazil signed a $2 billion deal with beef exporters from Alberta and Manitoba. Canadian beef exports to Brazil shot up 63%. Meanwhile, American beef, which once held 70% of Brazil's import market, plunged by 40% in just the first half of the year. Canada didn't reinvent anything. They just stayed consistent. And that made all the difference. Farms in Alberta that had shut down after the pandemic, back in full swing, running 7 days a week. Farmer income rose 16% in just 6 months. Manitoba reported its highest food processing growth in over a decade. Meanwhile, Texas, once a $3 billion beef export powerhouse, is in crisis. According to USDA data, over 200 ranches have pulled out of international trade. Not because they can't compete, but because they can't survive unstable policy. In Brazil, beef isn't just food. It's how you host a guest, seal a deal, celebrate a moment. So when a discerning country like Brazil chooses Canada over the US, it's not just a transaction. It's a shift in trust. Canada isn't just selling beef. They're selling reliability, stability, and promises that don't change with the next administration. And once a country gets a taste of that difference, others start looking north, too. Number 7, India. Just a few years ago, if you asked a young engineer in Bangalore or Hyderabad where they dreamed of launching their career, the answer was almost automatic: America. The H-1B visa, billion-dollar startups, the green card that was the American dream. But 2025 flipped the script. Over 12,000 Indian engineers and tech professionals have left the US for Canada, not because they were forced out, but because they chose a different path. And the reason isn't hard to figure out. Since the start of the year, the US has tightened its skilled worker visa policies, jacking up fees, raising qualifications, and delaying visa approvals. H-1B rejections jumped 18% in just 6 months. Meanwhile, key AI and defense tech agreements between the US and India got tangled in legal red tape. Then came May 2025 and Canada made its move. A game-changing tech partnership offer, 30-day tech visas, relocation support for families, waived financial requirements, and a long-term path to opportunity. It wasn't just policy, it was a formal invitation. India responded fast. Infosys moved its North American HQ to Toronto. Wipro and TCS launched new hubs in Vancouver and Calgary. Over $4.2 billion in investment shifted from the US to Canada, focused on AI, chip design, and software development. And it didn't stop with talent. Orders for iPhone modules and IoT devices from India started shipping straight to Canada, skipping US plants altogether. Meanwhile, startups in Seattle and Austin quietly shut their doors for lack of engineers. Amazon and Oracle cut back on tech hires. Silicon Valley is no longer the only place where dreams are made. Today, names like Kitchener, Waterloo, and Burnaby are buzzing in Bengaluru. And when a country like India, once deeply tied to US innovation, chooses Canada instead, it begs a bigger question. Who's next? Number 8. Australia. Australia, one of the most resource-rich countries on Earth, used to be a key strategic partner for the US in mining. Lithium, nickel, rare earths from Perth once flowed straight to Texas, fueling EV batteries and defense manufacturing. But in early 2025, Washington slapped a 30% tariff on all imported minerals. For Australia, it wasn't just about the money, it was a message. This partnership can't be trusted anymore. So in April, Australia made a move. They signed the Northern Stars deal with Canada, a $3.5 billion partnership covering investment, tech transfer, and shipping incentives. Now, over 100,000 tons of Australian ore bypass California, entirely heading instead to Thunder Bay, Sudbury, and Sept-Îles in Quebec. Sudbury, a city once dimmed by mining decline, is lighting up again. Smelters are being upgraded. Mining schools are packed. and average wages in the sector jumped 12% in just 3 months. Small towns that were waiting on a miracle, they're finally seeing momentum. And in the US, battery plants in Nevada, Arizona, and California are pausing production due to material shortages. According to Goldman Sachs, America lost over $1.1 billion in EV battery supply chain value in Q2 alone just from the mineral squeeze. While the US struggles to stay at the center, Canada isn't just stepping in as a middleman, they're buying into the whole system. From mining to refining to battery exports, they're building the full chain. And this deal with Australia is not just about minerals. It's a statement. When the US breaks trust, Canada can be the new anchor for the industries of tomorrow. Number 9, Italy. If you thought high-speed rail was finally making its comeback in the US through the Las Vegas-Phoenix route, you might want to look north. In 2025, Italy, a country synonymous with speed, style, and precision, made a surprise move, choosing Canada as its partner to build the next generation of high-speed rail. Originally, the US was on board with a $15 billion project deal. But after Washington hiked tariffs on transportation equipment, bogged the process down in red tape, and stalled on contracts, Italy backed out. Within just 4 months, the entire deal was renegotiated, this time with British Columbia and Ontario. The Italian government confirmed the first test run could happen in Canada by 2026. And by 2028, the full system AI integration, renewable power, maglev tech will be built and operated there. And this isn't just talk on paper. Near Vancouver, more than 4,200 new jobs have been created since May. Factories for train chassis, fuel cells, and autonomous control systems are back in action. Rail engineers have seen a 15% pay bump. Real estate prices in places like Chilliwack and Kamloops up 9% in just 6 months. Meanwhile, in the US, the Vegas-Phoenix project is still stuck in planning limbo. Over 5,700 rail jobs were cut in Q2. A plant in St. Louis, once a key supplier of control systems for Italy, has shut down indefinitely. High-speed rail isn't just a piece of technology. It's a symbol of connection, of progress, of vision. And now that symbol has found a new home: Canada. Number 10, Japan. No one saw it coming. Japan, America's top strategic ally in Asia, quietly signing a wave of high-tech agreements with Canada after the G7 summit in 2025. Sony AI just opened a research center in Toronto. NEC shifted its machine vision division to Vancouver. Meanwhile, the US-Japan Tech Cooperation Institute slashed 70% of its funding and stopped accepting students as of July. Over in Montreal and Ottawa, office spaces left empty since the pandemic are now buzzing with AI labs. No flashy speeches, no tweets, but every move is clear. Japan is choosing Canada as its next-generation tech partner. Not because Canada is the biggest player, but because they're steady, transparent, and they keep their word. In the 3 months following the G7, Canada's new AI patents surged by 22%, with over 1/3 tied to Japanese collaborators. The Vector Institute in Toronto secured $60 million in funding from 3 Japanese giants, fueling new breakthroughs in medical robotics, deep learning chips, and smart traffic systems. When a country as precise, loyal, and deliberate as Japan makes a move like this, it's not just a shift. It's a signal. And the aftershocks won't just hit Tokyo or Toronto, they might be felt all the way in Washington. This isn't just about trade, tech, or geopolitics. It's about the job you're in, the school your kids go to, and where you might retire one day. Let's take a closer look at what's really shifting, especially the things that aren't making headlines. If you believe this is a conversation worth having, share this video. And if you want to keep uncovering the truth behind the numbers, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's coming next. All the information in this video is based on public data, trade reports, and official statistics as of June 2025. This isn't political propaganda. It's not aimed at any individual or government. It's simply about opening up a new perspective on what's actually happening, whether the headlines mention it or not.